Winter arrives slowly, not with snow. First, the mornings become colder. The wind changes direction. The days grow shorter, almost without you noticing. The insects disappear. The birds that filled the sky only weeks ago are suddenly gone. The herd you've been following has started moving south, and every instinct in your body tells you the same thing. Something is coming. Today, winter is mostly an inconvenience. You put on a thicker jacket. You turn up the heat. Maybe you complain about scraping ice off your windshield before driving to work. By evening, you're back inside. Warm lights, hot food, a soft bed waiting for you. But imagine none of that exists. No house, no glass windows, no insulated walls, no electricity, no grocery store, no weather forecast telling you a storm is coming tomorrow. Imagine you're standing on an open plain 40,000 years ago. The sun disappears behind the horizon, and with it, the last bit of warmth. The temperature begins falling fast. You don't know how cold the night will become. You only know one thing. If you make the wrong decision before sunrise, you may never see another sunrise again. For ancient humans, winter wasn't just another season. It was the longest test of the entire year, a test that lasted months. One mistake could wipe out an entire family. One bad hunt, 1 week without fire, one unexpected snowstorm. That was all it took. And yet, somehow, generation after generation survived. They crossed frozen mountains, lived through ice ages, raised children in temperatures that would send many modern people running back indoors within minutes. How? The answer isn't that they were tougher than we are. It's that they understood winter in ways we've almost completely forgotten. Because winter doesn't actually kill you first. Cold does. Your body works like a furnace. Every second you're alive, it's producing heat. Your heart pumps warm blood through thousands of miles of blood vessels. Your muscles generate warmth every time they move. Normally, your core body temperature stays close to 37 degrees Celsius. A difference of just 2 or 3 degrees can become dangerous. Drop it far enough and your brain begins shutting down. Your hands stop working. Your thoughts slow. You become confused. Eventually, your heart can no longer beat properly. This condition has a name: hypothermia. Today, we think of hypothermia as something hikers or mountaineers experience. For ancient humans, it was an everyday threat, especially after sunset. People often imagine prehistoric winters as endless snow-covered landscapes. Sometimes they were, but not always. Even in places without deep snow, cold nights could become deadly. A clear sky might look beautiful. To a hunter-gatherer, it could mean disaster. Clouds act like a blanket, trapping heat close to the ground. Without them, warmth escapes into space. Temperatures plunge. The same campsite that felt comfortable during the afternoon could become freezing only a few hours later, which meant survival started long before anyone went to sleep. It started with choosing exactly where to stop. You wouldn't simply collapse wherever you happened to be. Every campsite was a calculation. Is there fresh water nearby? Can predators approach unnoticed? Will the wind hit us here? Could this valley flood if the weather changes? Does this cave protect us or trap smoke until we suffocate? A good campsite could keep everyone alive. A bad one could kill children before morning. Natural shelters became priceless. Rock overhangs, caves, dense forests that blocked the wind. Even small hills could make an enormous difference. Wind steals heat much faster than still air. Standing in a 20-kilometer-per-hour wind on a cold night can make your body lose heat dramatically faster than standing behind a rocky cliff only a few meters away. Sometimes survival came down to finding nothing more complicated than the right side of a hill. But shelter alone wasn't enough. Imagine walking into a cave as the temperature drops. At first, it feels warmer. Then you notice something. The cave isn't warm. It's simply less cold. Stone doesn't produce heat. It only slows the loss of it. Without another source of warmth, you'd still freeze. Which brings us to the greatest survival technology humanity ever discovered. Fire. Not the invention of the wheel. Not farming. Not metal. Fire. Because before fire, winter controlled humans. After fire, humans slowly began controlling winter. A single campfire transformed everything. It provided warmth. It scared away predators whose glowing eyes waited beyond the darkness. It dried wet clothing, cooked frozen meat, hardened wooden spear tips, produced light after sunset, and perhaps most importantly, it allowed people to stay together. Without fire, nights ended when the sun disappeared. With fire, families gathered close together. They repaired tools, planned hunts, shared food, told stories, passed knowledge from one generation to the next. In many ways, civilization didn't begin in cities. It began around a circle of flames. But here's the problem. Making fire is difficult. Keeping fire alive is even harder, especially in winter. A single snowstorm could soak your fuel. Strong winds could scatter burning embers. Heavy rain could extinguish hours of work in seconds. And if your fire died, you couldn't simply strike a lighter. You had to create another one from scratch. Sometimes using friction, sometimes striking stones together. Methods that demanded dry materials, patience, and skill. During harsh winters, many groups protected fire almost like another family member. Someone was always watching it, always feeding it, always making sure it survived the night. Because if the fire died, someone else might too. The hardest part about keeping a fire alive wasn't finding wood. It was finding dry wood. Picture yourself standing in a forest after 3 straight days of snow. Every branch around you is damp. The ground is buried beneath ice. Dead leaves have turned into frozen clumps. Even if you know how to make fire, the forest is fighting against you. So ancient humans learned something that survival experts still teach today. Never wait until you need fire to collect fuel. On warmer days, people gathered far more wood than they needed. They carried armfuls back to camp. They stacked branches beneath rock ledges where snow couldn't reach them. Some likely kept bundles inside caves where the air stayed dry. Fire wasn't just a flame. It was planning. Every burning log represented work that had been done days earlier, and that planning extended far beyond the fire itself. Because once you solved the problem of warmth, another problem appeared. Food. Winter transforms an entire landscape. The berries disappear. Edible plants retreat underground. Fruit trees stand empty. Even insects, a surprisingly rich source of protein, become difficult to find. The world suddenly feels quiet. For a hunter-gatherer, that silence was dangerous. Every calorie mattered. Your body actually burns more energy in cold weather just trying to stay warm. You're eating less, working harder, walking farther, and spending more energy simply existing. Imagine waking up hungry every morning knowing that today's hunt isn't optional. If you fail today, tomorrow becomes even harder. Many animals solved winter by hibernating. Humans couldn't. Some animals grew thick fur. Humans didn't. Instead, we developed something far more powerful. Cooperation. A single hunter has limited vision, limited strength, limited endurance. But 10 hunters? Now you can surround prey, drive animals toward hidden spearmen, share the weight of carrying hundreds of kilograms of meat back to camp. Winter rewarded groups. It punished people who tried to survive alone. Archaeologists have found evidence suggesting that prehistoric humans often cared for injured members of their communities, people who could not have survived without help. Think about what that means. If someone broke a leg in the middle of winter, the group didn't always leave them behind. Others hunted for them, shared food, protected them. In a world where every meal required enormous effort, feeding someone who couldn't contribute was an incredible sacrifice. But it was also an investment, because one day, the injured hunter might recover. One day, the healthy hunter might become injured instead. Survival wasn't about the strongest individual. It was about the strongest community. Then there was clothing. When people imagine ancient humans, they often picture them wearing rough animal skins draped over their shoulders. The reality was probably much more sophisticated. Animal hides are remarkable insulators. Fur traps tiny pockets of air close to the skin. Those pockets slow the escape of body heat. It's the same principle used in modern winter jackets, except nature invented it first. But wearing raw animal skin isn't enough. Fresh hides are stiff, heavy, wet. They rot quickly. They have to be scraped, stretched, dried, sometimes smoked over a fire to preserve them. This process could take days, sometimes weeks. Needles carved from bone allowed people to stitch hides together into clothing that actually fit the body. Loose skins flap in the wind. Properly sewn, clothing traps warmth. That difference can mean survival. Even footwear mattered. Bare feet lose heat rapidly. Walking through snow without protection can damage tissue within minutes. Simple boots stuffed with dry grass or fur created insulation between frozen ground and human skin. They weren't fashionable. They didn't need to be. They only needed to work. And they did. In fact, humans spread into some of the coldest places on Earth thousands of years before modern technology existed. Not because they ignored nature, but because they learned to work with it. Yet even with fire, even with clothing, even with shelter, winter still had one final weapon: the storm. Snowstorms aren't dangerous because of the snow itself. They're dangerous because they erase the world. Landmarks disappear. Paths vanish. The horizon blends into the sky. A hunter can become lost only a few hundred meters from camp. And once visibility disappears, finding your way back becomes almost impossible. Imagine standing in a white landscape where every direction looks exactly the same. No roads, no signs, only wind. Every step could be taking you farther from safety. Modern hikers sometimes die this way despite carrying maps, GPS devices, insulated clothing, and emergency equipment. Ancient humans survived because they respected storms enough not to challenge them. Sometimes the smartest hunt was the one that never happened. When the weather turned violent, staying inside shelter wasn't laziness. It was intelligence. Knowing when not to move could save more lives than any successful hunt ever could. And perhaps that's one of the biggest misconceptions we have about prehistoric people. We often imagine them constantly fighting nature. In reality, the best survivors listened to it. They watched birds. They studied clouds. They noticed the direction of the wind. They remembered which valleys flooded, which caves leaked, which hills stayed dry. Nature wasn't an enemy to defeat. It was a language to understand. And those who learned that language lived long enough to teach it to their children. But perhaps the greatest advantage ancient humans had wasn't fire, or clothing, or even intelligence. It was each other. Imagine a family trying to survive winter completely alone. 2 adults, a few children, 1 injury, 1 failed hunt, 1 illness. Their chances would collapse almost immediately. Now imagine 30 people sharing the same camp. Someone is repairing clothing. Someone is collecting firewood. Someone is watching children. The strongest hunters leave before sunrise. The elderly, who can no longer chase animals across frozen plains, stay behind and shape stone tools, prepare hides, and teach the younger generation everything they've learned over decades. Every person has a role, even if they never throw a spear. For a long time, scientists assumed prehistoric people barely lived past 30. We now know that's misleading. Many died young because life was dangerous. But if someone survived childhood, they often lived long enough to become grandparents. And grandparents may have been one of humanity's greatest survival tools. An older hunter might not outrun a reindeer anymore, but they remembered something more valuable: where food could still be found after heavy snowfall, which rivers froze first, which caves stayed warm, which plants remained edible long after everything else had disappeared. Knowledge became food. Experience became shelter. Memory became survival. Winter wasn't simply survived through strength. It was survived through information. And every generation inherited thousands of years of lessons without ever reading a single book. Then there was sleep. Modern homes allow us to sleep deeply. Locked doors, warm blankets, smoke detectors, electric lights. Ancient humans had none of these. Night brought a completely different world. The fire dimmed. Temperatures dropped. Predators became active. The sounds outside the shelter changed. A snapping branch. A distant howl. Heavy footsteps somewhere beyond the darkness. Lions. Hyenas. Wolves. Even if those animals never attacked, your brain stayed alert. Researchers believe humans may have evolved lighter sleep partly because of environments like these. Someone was almost always awake, not necessarily on purpose, just naturally. One person stirred, another woke to feed the fire. Someone checked on a crying child. Without realizing it, the group protected itself throughout the entire night. While one person slept, another listened. Morning was never guaranteed, but every sunrise meant one more victory. One more day survived, one day closer to spring. And eventually, spring always came. The snow melted, the rivers flowed again, animals returned, plants pushed through frozen soil. The world came back to life. But the people who saw that first green shoot were not the same people who entered winter months earlier. Winter had tested every decision they made, every relationship, every skill, every weakness. The families that survived weren't always the strongest. They were the ones who planned ahead, who shared food instead of hoarding it, who protected knowledge as carefully as they protected fire, who understood that surviving nature wasn't about defeating it. It was about adapting to it. Today, when temperatures drop below freezing, we barely think about it. We adjust the thermostat, order groceries online, wrap ourselves in insulated clothing designed by engineers. Our homes maintain the perfect temperature with the push of a button. Winter has become something we experience through windows. But for nearly all of human history, winter entered your home. It sat beside your fire. It followed every hunt. It shaped every decision you made. And the reason you're here today, the reason billions of people now live in places once covered by glaciers, is because countless generations faced that frozen world with nothing more than stone tools, animal hides, a carefully protected flame, and an extraordinary ability to work together. The next time cold air hits your face as you step outside, remember this. Somewhere in your body are the instincts of people who survived winters far colder than you will probably ever experience. People who looked at a world of snow, darkness, and hunger, and refused to disappear. Because long before humans conquered winter, winter tried very hard to conquer us.